And Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum and we are live streaming.
Thank you, Jennifer. And we've got Carol Fries on. Can you hear us, Carol? Commission member Carol?
I see him online.
Just want to make sure you can hear us.
Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. And I can hear you just fine.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Well, the time is now 5:01, and I'd like to call the Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Commission Thursday, July 21st, 2022, our second meeting to order. I have a motion to call us to order. All right. Invocation and Pledge. I'd like to call on Ms. Jackson. Carol, if you could lead us in an invocation.
Thank you. Yes, let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you and praise you for giving us this new day and an opportunity to serve you and the people of Charleston. I pray that we will use our hearts and our minds and all that you have poured into us for our conscience and our integrity and our energy. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And we stand for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America, republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is the approval of our current agenda. Can I hear a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Second.
In a second. I have a motion to approve and a second to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Next up is our public comment period. I do believe we have some guests here this evening. It's a big, long line, so we're going to give you each. We'll give everyone 2 minutes.
And if you could please state your name and address for the record as well.
Hello, good evening, committee and mayor, and thank you all for the invitation to be part of the conversation, whether we're observing or contributing to it. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. My name is Victoria Ray Moore. I'm the co-founder and executive director of a grassroots arts and culture organization called Tiny is Powerful. We represent the arts, the spirit of the arts, the culture of tiny business, smaller than small businesses, and we also represent the voices of the young people of our community. I also am the coordinator of programs and communications for a grassroots initiative, the Social Justice Racial Equity Collaborative, who was instrumental in guiding the slavery apology that was an early outcome of this committee in earlier forms, the existence of that. I'm about a year into the organization, and I'm proud of the work that we're doing. We want to be, and we being me, an individual citizen, me being the executive director of a grassroots movement, and also me being the coordinator of a grassroots movement, wherever I go, my voice represents so much more than my own. So I'm here to listen and to take information back to the communities that I serve. I'm also here to share with you all some tools, a tool for consideration. I recognize the formality of the meeting structure and how they are conducted, and that is what it is. As part of the Social Justice Racial Equity Collaborative, there's a larger movement taking place across the country, which is the movement for truth, racial healing, and transformation. There are a lot of nuances and specifics to that larger movement and how it aims to impact progress and change. I could take your whole meeting, but I won't. One of the tools, though, that govern some of our gatherings that we call racial healing circles, but you could call them listening sessions, you could call them meetings, call them what you want. But at the beginning of all of those meetings, we have a
Time.
You on that real quick. It's just, these are some touchstones that we use in the racial healing circles, which are really great. They're simple. There's only 10 of them. They're as simple as be 100% present and extend and presume welcome, listen deeply, always by invitation, no fixing, suspend judgment, identify assumptions, speak your truth, respect silence, maintain confidentiality, and when things get difficult, turn to wonder. And on that note, when things get difficult, I'd like to say I'm one of the few people that was able to participate in the drafting of the city's slavery apology before it was even presented to the city. That work was profound. That work was important. That work was acknowledging some truths of the city. I think it's really important as y'all continue having these important conversations in our community that we acknowledge that this isn't about guilt about one person. This isn't about something. We are not the center of human trafficking anymore. We were in the past as a city. We are a city that's experienced a lot of change and demographic change, and that's not necessarily from one individual person that's making that happen. It's a group of people. So this isn't personal work. This isn't work about guilt or shame. This is work about what is best for us as a collective community and how we care for each other and how we make sure that we build on what we've learned from the past and we make better decisions going forward. So with that, I'm going to present this to you, Chairman, and then I'll be done with my time.
And can we get your name for the record as well? I'm sorry.
It's Julie Hussey.
All right, thank you.
I'm Sandy Morkel. I am on the leadership team of the Social Justice Racial Equity Collaborative and was also part of that team that helped to author the slavery apology. And I applaud you for what you're doing. I applaud the continuation of this work. It's extremely important. We want you to know that we're here as a resource. We're here to lift you up. We're here to be able to do this work together. We have recognize some missing gap pieces that we're missing in this community, and that's what we're focusing on. But our collaborative is just that, a collaborative. It has all kinds of organizations involved, and HARC would be one of those. So we want that we all are needed. We all need each other to be able to continue this momentum and take this opportunity to be able to change the course of history here. So thank you for your work, and we look forward to supporting you in any way possible. Thank you.
Thank you to all the speakers. Are there any more speakers? Come on up, sir.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Watson. I stayed at 62 America Street for the last 64 years. When we speak about what we're trying to do as a nation, as a state, as a city, we can't leave out what unites us. And that is, we are of one breath, one blood, one flesh. And because of what you see, doesn't tell you that in a person. And I walk and life together. It's so joyful. If we use that, well, we know that's not being used. If I take the time to tell you about working right here on Exchange Street, 66, General Electric in the 70s, West End Dairy, Coburg Dairy, then Dean Food, Ferguson, and tell you the racism, how do you think I made it? How do we adjust it so the children have the avenue that these things won't face them? And that is happening big time. When you look at that article and saw that it was only 34% of the Blacks children are reading at proficiency level, those chains are still on them. How do we put in place a requirement of school district not to give us an analyzation that's so shallow you can't see what they have to do? How? That should be in place. How do we require every business here, say if the general population is at 38% for Black, then you should be seeking that goal and also understanding the people that you have there. We have to, the people, That's what it says in our Constitution. But look at the
Time.
life you can enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm gonna welcome our guests. If we are in the middle of public comment, if there's any folks that want to continue to add public comment, feel free to come on up. Okay. Marcus, you can't pass that up.
And the time is 2 minutes.
Well, I just would like to underscore that there's been a lot of work to get the commission here to this point, a lot of really dedicated professionals and people who have dedicated a lot to this work. So I really wishing the best for the commission, and we'll be following really closely, but I really hope that, again, that attention to detail and the attention to the impactfulness and the importance of this work is really important. So I hope that the commission as it's formed now understands that and really follows through with this for the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcus. Anyone else from the audience? Thank you. Thank you all for providing some input and feedback. It's wonderful to hear from the public, particularly this is our first option for public comment. We're going to continue this as additional commission meetings unfold, but thank you all for being here. Next on our agenda is approval of minutes from our June meeting. Can I hear a motion to approve our June meeting minutes? Can I get a second? I hear a second. All in favor of approving the June meeting minutes? Can I hear an aye?
Aye.
Hearing none, the June meeting minutes are approved.
And
Next.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Long has also joined us online.
Hey, Dr. Long, can you hear us?
Yes, I do. Good evening.
All right, good evening to you. Next up on our agenda is the status of our park manager search. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Harris, who's going to give an update, right? And if you can't, then the mayor's here, because I know the mayor wanted to chime in as well, so.
I'd like to defer to the mayor.
Well, it might change the report a little bit as I'm not a member of the commission, but proud to be here with y'all and proud to announce that we have a soon-to-be new employee of the city of Charleston that I wanted to introduce to you. She's with us here today, Adrienne Swinton. I'm going to ask Adrienne to come forward maybe and introduce herself for just a minute, but she's a native to our region and has formerly worked with the city of North Charleston and the medical university. And Adrienne, we are really looking forward to having you on board and working with you. Adrienne Swinton. Try that one.
Yes, it does. So good evening. My name is Adrienne Caper Swinton. And as the mayor stated, I'm a resident of North Charleston. I have done work with diversity, equity, and inclusion at my previous employment, which was the Medical University of South Carolina, where I served as the project coordinator there. That work I've brought into the community. So I also sit on the board of My Community's Keeper Mentor Group, and I'm a mentor there as well. I also was able to facilitate in some of the Charleston County school districts inside some of the high schools, just to bring some welcoming diversity and some diversity and equity training there as well. I'm so excited to be here. So I also serve on a board with Marcus in the CJCC, so I'm happy to see him here as well, and everyone who has dedicated their time and service to do this work. This is such a work of service. I do have a daughter, Jayla Brielle, and she is what makes my voice sound so loudly, because we have a generation behind us that we're responsible for. And so change is now, and we need to be those change agents. And I'm just so excited to be a part of the city of Charleston's this commission and lead this work. So thank you for having me.
Thank you and welcome. I want to thank committee members, Alvin Johnson and Carol Jackson, for being able to participate in the interview process. It's an example of how we see the partnership going and the resources moving forward. So we look forward to great things coming forward.
Thanks, Jerry. Just to mention, you are a Stahl graduate, right? So born and raised, yeah, saw that. So Yes. So it's a pleasure to have you. And just to reiterate, the mayor said, we are welcome. Very excited to have you on board. Thank you.
Mayor, can you use your mic?
See you later. Next up on our agenda is a review of the HARC ordinance. One thing I think we overlooked at the last meeting was a specific just review, making sure that we're all understanding of the ordinance, particularly sections 207 through 209. So if you have that in front of you, and I believe Carol and Kim, you all received copies of this at home. If you don't have,
Yes.
perfect. I'm not going to read this word for word. Jerry, you want to take this? Or?
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, as all of you who've worked on committees before know how important it is to have a firm foundation in terms of understanding the basic documents that govern our work. I like these three sections. Section 207 deals with the purpose. Section 208 deals with the responsibilities, and 209 with the organization. So I kind of see that as the why, what, and how. And what I'm suggesting that we do, just walk through this really quickly, have some discussion. If there are questions that you think we should address perhaps in the future in terms of clarification, let's do that. So what I'm looking for is questions at this point. So section 207 does not have numbered paragraphs. The first paragraph defines the purpose, and it specifically provides a definition of the term equity. It shall be defined as a guarantee of fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement, while at the same time striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented full participation of some groups. So that is the fundamental definition of equity. Paragraph 2 discusses our responsibility to prioritize racial equity in the work by recognizing that it does impact other groups. Paragraph 3 identifies our role as advisory to the mayor and city council. Paragraph 4 identifies that the group, we're not obligated to use the commission, the special commission report as a blueprint, but we do have a responsibility within 5 months of our first meeting was in June, so we have 4 months, to present a report to the city council regarding those actions that we think appropriate for the council to take. That may require us to move some action. We have an agenda item later in the agenda to address that. The recommendations shall adhere to the principles of equity and the laws of city, state, and federal government, non-discrimination. Section 6 discusses the initiatives to recognize the need to eliminate vestiges of slavery and Jim Crow era activities, changing our local government as necessary to reflect equity and inclusion of all people. Paragraph 7 again articulates that it's not a blueprint to adopt all of the recommendations, and specifically uses a language the HARC will not advocate to defund the police, provide cash reparations, teach critical race theory, or advocate to violate the South Carolina Heritage Act. So those are the purposes. That's the why we exist. So the what? What are we supposed to do? First, we're supposed to make recommendations to the mayor and council to develop a racial equity framework for decision-making for the city. 2, we're supposed to assist and participate with city staff in public engagement and outreach activities and education. 3, I see as an additional statement, the same thing about it, outreach and education. 4, again, provide assistance and training, outreach and education. 5, provide needed resources and support to the city's Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation. 6, work with the city toward the development of a strategy and outreach again to engage a broad spectrum of community members. So there is an outreach, definitely an outreach component to the work that we're supposed to be doing. At the direction of the mayor and the council, collaborate with such organizations, and there's a list of them, 8 that we all will be vetted. We will take a look at the state statute regarding community relations councils and see if that is a function that this body should take on to become an agency of the South Carolina Human Affairs Commission. 9, we have an annual reporting requirement on the status of the work of the commission to the city council and the public. And we are to review and make recommendations in other areas of equity, inclusion, and reconciliation as needed, and engage the mayor and council as needed in furtherance of the welfare of the city. That's kind of a broad and all the duties not assigned to you already kind of clause. And number 11, at the direction of the mayor, carry out any other issues that deem necessary to carry out duties and responsibilities. So we may get some additional feedback from the mayor and the council in that regard. So on the questions of the what, any clarifications, concerns folks have on the what? Okay, great. The how, okay. So membership, we have 13, the calls for 13 members. We have with the appointment of Councilman Seekings this week, we now have 12 members. There's still a vacancy on the body to be filled. Management, that is how we get supported. The manager of equity, inclusion, and racial conciliation, and other staff and consultants as needed. As you think back to the what we're supposed to be doing, all right, it sounds like it's quite a bit. We have the authority to establish and designate subcommittees as we see necessary. They're not limited to their areas, those noted, including housing, healthcare, criminal justice, small business, economic development, and communications. But we're not limited to those, or we're not required to, in fact, establish those committees if that doesn't make sense to us in terms of moving forward. They're specific in terms of our meetings. We will have a regular schedule of meetings, and we already have established a meeting schedule that has been posted, and we can review. It also says that our quorum is 5 members, and we'll have a written record of our proceedings and file the record with the clerk or the council after completion of any meeting. Procedure, section E. The commission shall make and alter rules governing its organization and procedures that are not inconsistent with any city ordinance or Robert's Rules of Order. There are a bunch of things that are not included in here. All right. For example, last meeting, we discussed the notion that we'll call each other by first names. All right. That's kind of a protocol. Okay. That's just an example of the kind of thing that we might want to address. And later on in the meeting, I have a suggestion that we take a look at the city council's rules of order and a couple of other boards and commissions of the city and adopt some of those with the working committee to move forward with that. The council will review the establishment of reconsider the establishment and the function of the commission every 3 years. And then there's language regarding transition for new members. Any questions or concerns? Again, we didn't have a chance to talk about this. I hope you had a chance to review it. This is one of the documents that we definitely is a source document. The other source document, obviously, is a special commission final report. And I would think another important source document is the Avery 2015 racial disparities report, which provides the database for and context for much of the discussion. Mr. Chairman, if there are no questions or comments, turn it back to you, sir.
Thank you, Jerry. Anything in the outer world, the Ethernet? Kim and Carol, anything on your end that you wanted to chime in on? Questions?
No.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, moving on. It is 5:26, trying to be respectful of our time here this evening. We got a few items that are going to be potential action items for this evening. One of which I do want to just kind of get out there and get it over with was the original notation and language using my role here, which was chair. I had a great conversation with Jerry about this, and I don't want to be a chair. I'd like to be a co-chair. Here's the reason: this is shared work between all of us and shared responsibility. Quite frankly, I don't want any titles, but someone has to lead these meetings. So I think in that spirit, I'm going to ask for us to designate ourselves as co-chairs as opposed to chair and vice chair. And I'd like a motion to make that. Can I get a second? Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
None opposed. That motion does pass. We are now considered co-chairs, Mr. Chair, co-chair. Stuck with me forever. Next two pieces, the next two pieces that we need to pivot to are actually getting some work done, right? This is the second meeting. I think folks listening are probably eager to make sure that we can actually start deliberating on some items. So the first is creating a subcommittee on rules. I believe, Ms. Cook, the rules were distributed, council rules. If they weren't, we'll get them out to you, but we want to use those as a template for the rules that we need to create. And I would strongly encourage you all, just like we did with the special commission, you're going to have to meet separate of this meeting. You can meet monthly, you can meet bi-weekly, you can meet for a half hour bi-weekly, but the goal is to basically come back at the next meeting with a set of rules that will govern us. Again, you can use the city council rules as a template, but here's some things to think about. As recommendations get vetted here, how are we moving them to the standing committees? Is it a unanimous vote? How many folks need to be on the committees? That's all right. How many folks need to be on our subcommittees that we're creating on rules and special commission? Is it 3? Is it 5? We certainly need an odd number to make that vote. So those are just some of the things that I wanted to share with you all. Co-chair, any concerns or questions about that before we?
Actually, the council adopt a set of rules governs behavior inside meetings, how you interact with each other. It also specifies what the agenda looks like. It also specifies, the fact that when we bring our cell phones in, we should turn them off. They also has the notion of being recognized to speak, the limit of speaking in order, that so we can't have individual filibustering all night long. The ability to call for a division of the House, specifically if we choose not to have a voice vote. In this case, it'll be the co-chairs have the opportunity to vote. In this case, it says the mayor has the opportunity to vote, but that's the case. The setting up of committees, the composition of the committees in this document, you'll see the city has standing committees. All right, those standing committees do not have any they're staffed by city employees, but it has no non-city elected official on it. I think we may want to look at that in some of the areas to consider having people who are experts and resources, but who are not members of the commission or elected officials. That's something for us to talk about. And obviously to talk about, as the chair has already mentioned, the quorums for those meetings, how they're chaired and the like, and notices. There'll be also a further, we should have some conversation around questions of citizen participation in meetings and perhaps outside of meetings if we so choose to have public hearings or community meetings, how they're governed. These do not include discussions of media interaction. So we'll need, the notion of, who speaks for us? When can you speak for us? Who's us? in media activities. And it also does not speak to the question of removal for non-participation. While some of us are appointees of members of council, if we establish a rule, for example, one municipal body I serve on, there's a rule that says if you miss 3 successive meetings without any kind of excuse, okay, the body can ask for you to be removed and be replaced. That's something, again, the question, that's something that we want to establish as a rule. Those are all some things I think that we, the subcommittee should meet and address. It can come up pretty shortly as some template for that. Mr. Chair, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I'll make this in one motion. I'd like to make the motion to establish the rules subcommittee, but also the makeup of that. So let's have that discussion, and then I'll make a motion to establish and name who's on that. So any volunteers for the rules subcommittee? Mr. Bowden? Sorry.
I have a question. So
Sure.
how many subcommittees will there be? And do we have the makeup of those subcommittees before making that decision?
That's a great question. So right now, we're initially just establishing the subcommittee on rules and a subcommittee on our special report, because our first task is to basically take the special report. We essentially have till mid-November. The clock started ticking last meeting. We have mid-November to provide a full set of recommendations to council regarding the special commission's report and what recommendations we're going to forward. That's going to take some work. There's 125 recommendations. You all are going to need some time to vet that. So right now, the only 2 subcommittees that we're establishing are rules and the special commission report. Ms. Carol?
Thank you. I appreciate your coaching, co-chair, but could we think of these then more like, I know subcommittee is the proper descriptor, but more like task force efforts, because we're going to work our way out of a job once we have the evaluation of the recommendations back to the full commission, and then maybe we will establish some other subcommittees that would take on some of the recommendations by topic or things like that.
I think that's a great idea.
So we're not talking about standing committees at this moment in time. We're talking about work committees.
Yep, I'm fine with that. If you go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, I think that the idea is to get the rules up, right? Get the 4-month activity straight. We'll also be talking about later on the agenda, a workshop where we develop some of the tools that we need to do the ongoing work that you refer to. So these are actually short-term committees, all right? Much like the notion of our short-term interim co-chairs, they should be done certainly inside 6 months.
Right.
But I mean, that's the notion. These are not standing committees. These are committees that we need to get the work done.
Yep. Does that answer your question?
This is Carol Fryan. I have a question. And I guess for me, it seems like we've made. I think I just heard something that I didn't think was how we were going to approach this. It sounds like Co-Chair Saccharin, you're saying that we have to take the earlier report and start working through that. And I thought in section 208, it says we're under no obligation to use the commission report as a blueprint, framework, or path forward.
Paragraph 4, which you make reference to, does read as follows: HARC is under no obligation to use the ERC Commission report as a blueprint, framework, or path forward, notwithstanding within the first 5 months from the first duly called meeting of the HARC, it shall review the EIRC report and submit those recommendations HARC believes will best achieve equity, inclusion, and racial conciliation in accordance with the approved 10-year city master plan.
That is correct. So Carol, I hear your question. And quite frankly, we aren't using the entire report as a blueprint to move forward. The point of this, we'll call it the working group, is to basically look at all those recommendations and figure out which one of those recommendations we are going to advance to essentially our city council standing committees, which are staffed by our duly elected representatives, our city council members. That's in the ordinance. That is the path forward.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Enlightenment, because yes, it does say we need to review it, I guess. So I guess the wordings that's used in there, it says we're under no obligation, but then it comes back and says, well, yeah, but we're going to review it. And, but okay, I understand that.
And just to elaborate on that, Carol, is that is the charge of this HARC group, which is why it's such a diverse group, is we will have that conversation. We will take a vote on, if we have to do it one by one, every one of the recommendations, which ones to advance, which ones not to advance. But that's the point of this established body. Yes.
And if I can just add to that briefly, having been in on these very long conversations at council about this ordinance and how it changed over time, I think that the intent of this is to recognize that we're not going to do everything in the report. That was never the intention of this. There are some pretty specific things in section 2-207 that we pretty clearly are not to consider. But at the same time, the entire document was a process, or was a product of a lot of thought, a lot of great work, with a lot of basis in fact and the real problems that we have in our community. So it was a recognition that while plenty of people disagreed with some things in the report, it's still there and it's still helpful, and it still should be gone back through to really highlight the things that sort of everybody agrees on, which when we were talking about this at council, everybody used numbers like, well, everybody agrees with 90% of this, right? Things like that. So this is to get at that 90% and make sure that just because there was some disagreement with it, we weren't, throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Thank you, Stephen. Anyone else on this? I'd like to get this special, we'll call it the task force on rules, established and voted on. So volunteers for the task force on rules. If you could just state your name for the record. So Jennifer has it and I get it.
Bob Simmons.
What is it again, sir? Okay, Bob Simmons, Stephen Bowden.
Stephen Bowden.
Jerry, and so what we're going to do to help is we're going to divide and conquer. So Jerry's going to basically staff this, and I'm going to staff the special commission report task force. So Jerry's also on that. Anyone else? All right. So with those names, I'd like to call the motion to approve. We'll call it the workforce or work group on rules for the commission with the following 3 members that were noted. I don't have them written down. Can I get a motion to approve that?
So
with any all yeses, just please say yes.
Yes.
Any nays? The motion passes. We're going to use that to create the work group on rules with those members. Next up is we'll use that same nomenclature, the work group on the special commission report. Again, just to review, the goal of that work group will be in the next 4 months. I believe it's our November meeting. We would come to this body with a set of recommendations that have been vetted through that work group, but also we will have several of these meetings. So some of those recommendations can be discussed as you work towards your final recommendations that have to be presented to council. Can I get some volunteers or is any input on that? Co-chair or Alvin? Alvin?
I just want to volunteer.
All right.
Alvin Johnson.
Elvin Johnson, volunteer for the special commission report. Carol Jackson. Any other volunteers? All right, so is that 3? All right. I would encourage anyone else that hasn't participated in either one. We could use your help.
Mr. Co-Chair, I would urge can certainly suggest that we will let everyone, all of the commission members know when the task force will be working the meeting so that folks can join if they in the conversation and participation to encourage that. And I would hope somewhere down the line, we would have a protocol that would suggest that each member of the commission is engaged and involved in some structure, in some way, putting in some time over time, because it's a lot of work to be done.
We need the diverse.
Yes, right.
Mr. Co-Chair, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Do the rules of quorum still apply to the subcommittees?
That's part of your rules committee would have to establish that, I guess. I would say, so how we work at the special commission, just for those that weren't paying attention or following, those, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Cook, those meetings were publicly noticed. We did a Zoom for those.
Yes, for the subcommittee meetings, yes.
So these should be treated just like our meeting today.
Correct. So they would have to have an agenda and minutes, just like the main commission. So your quorum would probably be 2.
I guess my quibbling is that the quorum is 5
Well,
for the body, so we would not.
yes. For the larger body, the quorum is 5.
So it would require public notice and an agenda posting in minutes. I'm just asking, Jennifer.
Yes, are you asking for the subcommittee?
Yes.
Yes, we would have to have an agenda posted for the subcommittee, and it would be open to the public as well.
Okay, thank you.
And just for clarification, what is the typical turnaround times? Is it 48 hours?
So the FOIA deadline is 24 hours. It has to be posted no later than 24 hours, but we like to have it posted online at least a few days in advance, just so the public has notice.
Thank you. Any more questions about establishment of the second working group on the special commission report? So I'd like, but I do want to echo co-chair Jerry's comments. I realize this is a new endeavor for many of you. You're still trying to get your feet wet, but I would strongly encourage as we progress to avail your time and because you've come from diverse backgrounds, you've got some expertise that we would like to tap into. So as we progress, we'd really love to have you involved.
Are these going to be virtual or in person? I would seriously, for smaller groups, the virtual, in my experience, works just fine.
Yeah.
It's when you add a ton of people that it can get a little bit unruly.
I would leave that up to the group, but I thought that the virtual subcommittee meetings we had for the special commission were tremendously helpful, very convenient. Try to keep it, quick time, keep it down to an hour to be respectful of folks' time. So I mean, that's my thoughts. Thanks, Scott or Stephen. So I'm going to call this to question. Any more questions on this before we call the question on this?
And
So
we
I'd like,
just-
go ahead, Jennifer.
I was gonna say we need a motion and a
Yep.
second. Thank
Yep.
you.
Can I get a motion to create and a second? All in favor, say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Great, so that motion passes. Now we've created we'll call it a working group subcommittee on rules, a working group subcommittee on the special commission report. Just to reiterate, the goal of that special commission subcommittee would to produce by mid-November a full set of recommendations. Next on the agenda is the approval of a equity and diversity workshop. Now, this is something that we have tried to institute before with the special commission. I think I alluded to this at our previous meeting about working our best to get everyone on the same page in terms of language, particularly common language around the terms we use. We think that this workshop will help with that. There is funding available. We're just trying to figure out how much, but the funding is there. Staff and Rick and the mayor and Adrienne will be working on that. I wanted to bring this up for discussion about a timeline and then any questions about the actual workshop itself. So it's open for discussion. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, I'm assuming this is like an all day on a Saturday, or do we have a time frame or?
That's a great question. I was not suspecting it being all day endeavor. We ideally would want to invite the actual other city council members to the workshop. That's kind of our plan. So it'd be this commission as well as our colleagues on city council. I can't tell you if it's an all day, but it certainly wouldn't be an all day. I think the previous training we had, Jerry, you want to chime in?
So the model that was planned, we were unable to execute for the special commission were like 2.5, 3 hours sessions. But there were multiple sessions, right? And some follow-up activities. So you have the sessions, you do some work, the consultant comes back, facilitates some more conversation to see how we move, all right? And is available for consultation should we need them moving forward. It's really a team building, organization development kind of best practice to try and move that forward in that session. So it's not go to school and get a certificate. You know, it's
different types of government. Sometimes like send everybody away for a day. Sometimes
but to respect people, the reality of people's time, you know, and retention, and the notion of if we have some training and we're starting to use language, to come back to see whether or not we in fact are able to use it. Do we need to change the language? All right, or there's some different things that needs to be changed. It's really a development. It's ongoing development and workshop concept was presented for the special commission.
Carol or Elvin, I think one of you had it. Carol?
I mean, I like the way that you were just going, Jerry and Bob, in terms of, I think more importantly than, you know, when and how, what, where and how long, I think we need to be in agreement as we leave here that the purpose of an equity and diversity workshop like this would be to give us a collegial framework so that we all have a way of talking about the same things, thinking, you know, not in lockstep, but at least having that common denominator of understanding that will give us the richness of adding our own, you know, personhood into whatever decisions we're going to be recommending as time goes on. So it's really a foundational, for me, it's a foundational requirement that we not have the diversity among us that isn't framed by something that we can commonly look at together. So.
Thank you, Carol. Anyone else? So as I look back and it was shared with me, the first training was an hour and a half. They did 2 trainings, so it was a total of 3. But that's really essentially what I'd like to figure out now and give some guidance to Adrian, who starts in a couple weeks. Is this in terms of our time? Would you rather have it be a 3 or 4 hour training or break it up into 2 separate trainings? We don't have to answer that today, but I think, you know, if there's, feel free to chime in, but I just want to make sure that that's on our radar as we schedule this, because I do want maximum participation. I think it's critically important. And as I said at the previous meeting, I think this is quite frankly one of our missteps with the special commission is we didn't take the time. So I think it's important that we take the time. But I'm going to leave that up to you. Go ahead, Carol.
We're not going to be making decisions about the, you know, the time frame, but maybe just get a show of hands about how many people would be eligible to come for a full morning on a Saturday. I've been part of a lot of these over my long life of nonprofit work, and I do think that you build up sort of a, you know, collegiality, a momentum of relationship and familiarity. If you stay together a little longer than an hour or 2 meeting, it sometimes helps to break the ice and, you know, get people really comfortable with being together in a small group. So that would be my preference, is that we schedule ourselves to a getting started longer format. Then we can decide down the road if we need some fine tuning or some other, you know, updating similar sessions. Getting started long.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, it seems like a Saturday morning might be the most appropriate time. And
okay.
I know for me, that would probably work out best. So I was just going to toss that out as.
All right. Thank you for that. Any objections to potentially exploring that Saturday morning 3 or 4 hour training. Okay, any objections from folks virtually? Kim and Carol?
Nope.
No, not for me.
All right, cool. So I think that gives our new staff person, Adrian, some guidance and some kind of thoughts about that. We want to try to get that scheduled sooner rather than later. Adrian, you start on August 8th. So we'll be working, my co-chair Jerry and I will be working with Mike and Adrian as she gets onboarded, and we'll try to get something scheduled and sent out to you all. Any more questions, sir? Go ahead.
So we established a committee to make recommendations from the report. Why would we not have this workshop with everybody involved in it and then ask who wants to help with those recommendations?
That's a good idea.
I feel like from just listening to what's going on here, you guys are marathon runners. I'm starting and I'm walking.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank
That's
you for
just
that.
how I feel right now.
Thank you.
I'm behind the 8 ball. So that's why I'm sitting over here kind of. But the simple fact is I don't know that we're all in the same position with this report. So if that's the report we need to talk about or going to make recommendations on, how do we get there?
Okay.
That's an excellent point. The challenge is that we've got a short time frame, right, to get the recommendation, to get a conversation about the recommendations. So we may have to be operating on parallel paths in terms of unless we can get it scheduled sooner.
I do think a couple things. One is a lot of this is just in the ordinance, and that was let me just harken back. We gave ourselves 90 days to come up with the special commission report. And we all, chuckle and laugh about that, thinking, why did we even put that in there? Because it was a lot of work. What I'm saying is I think maybe we can revisit this at council and extend that 5 months if we need to, because I do want to be intentional. And I want to hear exactly to your point. So we can do that if we need to bring that to council. So I just want to reiterate and hear what I'm hearing from you is you want to spend some time on the special commission report, or do you think we should do the workshop first and that will set the stage? I'm just trying to understand.
We're evaluating a report, and right now you've got 2 people that said they felt comfortable enough to make recommendations off that report. I'm going to assume that those are people who have been working on this committee for a while. You now have 13 people.
Gotcha.
And I don't know where everybody else is in relation to this, what they know about it, but you're asking for a recommendation. You don't know what I was quiet because I don't really know what I'm working on, because I've had a month to look at this and I've looked at it a couple of times and I'm halfway through the report. So your committee's not up to speed equally to make recommendations. And why 5 months?
Gotcha.
I mean, if you're going to make recommendations, this is why can't we make a recommendation? I would make a motion that we go back to council and extend that time frame. I mean,
Okay. So there's a motion to go back to council to extend the 5-month period. Is there any particular time, or you want to leave it open-ended?
I don't think this. I think everybody, this isn't something that should have a time frame. I think there should be work on it, but I think 5 months. We're going to meet 3 more times before you got to present.
Right.
Based on what you're telling, the time frame here, we got to do this in November. We're going to meet basically August, September, and October. In November, you got to make a presentation. So you got 3 more meetings to make recommendations, or we go off from the very first line in there and says, you don't have to make recommendations. It doesn't have to be your blueprint at all.
Okay.
I think 5 months might be a reasonable time to say, okay, this is where we're at, and maybe come up with a projection, because to the point he's got, that we've got different levels of expertise, but we can probably come up with something about, within 5 months, we should know how people are coming along and maybe have a better framework. So maybe change the goal of 5 months to a different outcome at 5 months.
I see what you're saying.
So instead of having a completed report evaluating everything, saying this is how far we've gotten, we think it's going to take X to get to Y.
Okay. Stephen?
Yeah, I've been struggling to think about why we put that in there, and we spent a lot of time talking about other language in the ordinance and not that one so much. But I think the reasoning for that in the first place was there were a number of members of council who were concerned that we might create a commission that would just kind of languish, and there wouldn't be that sense of urgency. So I don't ever want to speak for my colleagues, but I think they would like to hear from us. So maybe that 5 months could almost be like a status check, right? As opposed to, some list of things that we want to be considered. We just make sure that they understand that we're working towards that, and kind of what we've done to get there.
Okay.
Just have something reading that whole purpose section. It's also you have to do it in conjunction with the comprehensive plan. So I think to ask this group to really understand the comprehensive plan in 5 months is a task. So you're really looking at the special commission's recommendations in conjunction with the comprehensive plan. So I think you're right. I mean, just a reporting you're moving along, but I don't think 5 months you could do that.
Thank you, Rick.
I just wanted to ask, because I had a note there, I assume we get to a point later, but it seems an appropriate point now, is the 10-year master plan. I don't have any exposure to that other than a little bit West Ashley. It's I think a small part of it. It's how because it's the kind of thing I can be emailed and read, or what is it going to take to get a feel for that?
So I appreciate this conversation because it's clear to me that there are some, not just the workshop, but there's some data and resources that you all need as commission members to help you make the best decisions on how to move forward. So let's spend some time to figure out what those are. So, the language around equity, particularly a lot of language that's in the SEC Special Commission report, has already been embedded in our 20-year plan. I just want to make that clear. That this stuff is already integrated, it's folded in, it's incorporated. So what we're working on is not new. Having said that, I think it'd be fair for you all to see those plans. So what I'm hearing is you all need a copy of our most recent plan. You certainly need a copy of the Special Commission report if you don't have it. I think our homework for us last time was to kind of delve into that. The Avery report, yep. Yeah. So we need to make sure you all have copies of that as well. So I do appreciate the suggested pause on some of this to make sure you're all caught up. Carol?
I volunteer to help work on the resources that everyone should have.
Awesome,
at
thank
their
you.
fingertips.
So I guess what I'd like to make a motion is a motion to amend the current ordinance, which basically states that we'd have to report out mid-November, which is 5 months, to basically a status check on where we are. Is there anything else we want to include in that amendment?
And Mr. Chairman, there's a motion on the floor to extend the time frame. Did they want to amend that?
Well, did I get a second on that?
Jackson.
Oh, that person would have to.
Burl made the motion. Carol seconded it.
Okay, so I think we need to withdraw that motion.
I would, if you withdraw. Because we're gonna make the 5 month thing more holistic.
So we want to withdraw your first motion, which was to extend the 5 months, and in place, we're going to put the motion, which is basically a report out in 5 months.
Okay. We're gonna give a progress report.
I still go back to my same question. We got 3 meetings.
Right.
To give them a status. How are we going to get how are we gonna know where we are in 3 more meetings? This meeting's almost over.
Yep.
You got 3 more meetings to still evaluate all this.
Well, that's why we broke it up to the work groups. Is the intent was those work groups would also be meeting as well. So if they're meeting separately and bringing some of those recommendations to these meetings, we could have those discussions. So essentially, we could be meeting 6 times before the November, if theoretically. But I want to be respectful of your point that there's some work we have to do ahead of time. So I guess I'm trying to understand your biggest concern. Is it that there's stuff and items that you want to catch up to speed to make an informed decision before we report to council?
I don't know how you evaluate, because this document that I thought that I've been looking at is not the document that we're talking about. How do we catch up? And I don't know how much bigger the other document is than this thing I have that we were given a copy of at the first meeting.
So the way we catch up is by amending the current ordinance to basically take that timeline away and basically just replace it with wording that says we're going to report out to council in 5 months. To Stephen's point, we do have council members that were concerned about making sure that we're moving forward with progress, and quite frankly, I am. So I want to make sure that we provide a progress report at the November city council meeting. That doesn't mean we have to have all the recommendations vetted. We're just providing an update. Would you be amenable to that?
I'm not opposed to that.
Okay.
I come from a world where you can either do it fast or you can do it right, but you generally can't do it.
Well, I think, yeah, thank you.
Not messy.
Right. I think we're all on the same page that we want to be intentional and do it right. So I appreciate those comments.
So
But we
your
just need you to,
motion is?
well, we need to withdraw the first
I'll
motion,
withdraw my
right?
motion.
Thank you. Thank you. So the motion on the floor is that we are going to change the amend the language in the ordinance to reflect that we will report out at the November city council meeting, the status of the commission. Progress status at the November city council meeting.
Second, motion moved and seconded.
Awesome. All yeses, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The motion passes. So that will give us some additional time that we need. Stephen?
And to address your concerns, I mean, I think we can make clear when we go to amend this that not to expect anything in particular. I mean, we may find that we delve in and, you know, we need more time to talk before we have anything specific. And we may just, you know, tell them that we've decided on these committees. We've decided on, you know, the makeup of them. We've decided on the rules. We're working on it. Yeah.
I just do want to acknowledge, though, your comments that we're all coming from a different place, not just our life experience, but, you know, we've spent a better part of a year or two on this. Jerry, Elvin, Carol, Stevens just joined. So I want to respect that and I want to honor that. So we will make sure to slow it down a little bit, but still keep it moving. So I appreciate those comments.
And then for those of us who, I'm so intrigued by all of this, clearly there's big work to be done here that requires that level of scrutiny and intensity, but at the same time, there's urgency attached to that. And you're right, Carol, I mean, people lose interest when there's too much time involved and something that was important becomes less relevant. So we're balancing that. So such good points here. So what I would request, could I audit these? I have no doubt I'm going to want to jump in, but I would love to be feeling a little bit better prepared. Is that fair that I could audit some of these subcommittees? And then that sounds so chicken, but it really does. But in corporate America, it's fascinating to watch that wheel turn and how quickly things are diverted to something else that's more urgent and shinier. So I don't want to lose that. So I just would request, because I think you're right. I think there'll be some of us that feel compelled to join after we get to know more. And so I just requested I would like to audit those because it sounds like they'll be virtual and very easy to attend.
Fair enough. So Jennifer, just a note on our end is to make sure that the invite goes out to all commission members for these two subgroups we've created.
Jason, this is Carol Fry.
And Carol.
I just want to reinforce for Robert, you know, I'm like you, I really appreciate his bringing his concerns up because there are several of us who, you know, we feel like we're drinking from a fire hose. There's, you know, a lot of material that we're having to go over. And as it was stated in the minutes from the last meeting, you know, a part of what we're trying to do is make sure that we're hearing different perspectives on these issues, and that at the end, you know, we're successful because we did hear those, and then we come to agreements on moving forward. So I just want to reinforce and say thanks again, you know, for raising that point. I think it's a very valid point, and I think, you know, at least I feel more comfortable knowing that now we have a little bit of freeboard in terms of what we have to deliver in November.
Good points, Carol. Kim, anything on your end?
No, not at this time.
We're going to conclude in a few minutes. So just for the record, Carol, you had said that you're going to work with Jennifer or Adrian to compile the list of needed items. So Avery report, if you don't have, yep. Avery report, special commission report, city plan. That should take you a good 3 months to read through all those. So thank you, Carol, for that. This was kind of open discussion, but is there anything else for tonight's meeting before we adjourn that we want to address? Yes, sir.
First off, I need to apologize to the commission. This has been a busy week for me census wise, and Google, I swear, said this was 5:30. So it was not raining and I took a walk around the block. I'm sorry for that. In reading through what we had, this disparities book that we were given last time has a lot of really good data in it. And one of the things we had mentioned was working with other elements of government and social groups around. And it occurred to me that this could be really valuable for CARTA. It could be really valuable for the Housing Authority. It could be really valuable for the Board of Architectural Review. I assume that maybe the Housing Authority's probably already seen it, but I don't know if CARTA or anybody else. So those are people, if we haven't already provided this to those organizations, I think they would find it useful. And I would ask anybody else to think if there's any other elements of government or social outreach that might, because there's good data you can build stuff on.
That's a good point.
I mean, a lot of what we've got to do is because our charter isn't as precise as a lot of this stuff is. So we got a lot of work to do, but this is work that's done. I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments before I conclude? Kim, Carol?
What happened to our name tags?
You're right. You're right. So do you want permanent name tags or just like the
Anything
sticker
right
name tag?
here. I want to know everybody.
I agree.
And that requires knowing everybody's name.
All right.
I know there are two Carols here. They're
So-
spelled differently.
I'm going to ask
Name tags.
Mr. Wett.
Thank you.
We need name tags, permanent with gold plated or just like.
I want mine to be the biggest and the
Okay,
fanciest,
all right,
okay?
All right. Just want to add, as we close to your comments, as we continue on this process together, I think these meetings should be part working, but also part listening to folks on the outside. Tonight was a great example of an outside group that does a lot in this space. So we welcome them. We want to encourage them to come back and present in a formal capacity at some point, but also hearing from some of our partners that aren't necessarily doing this work. And you touched upon something. It'd be awesome to hear from CARTA around some of the challenges they have. I think making that connection for us in real terms, real life policy, and seeing, this didn't happen 200 years ago, that this is happening currently in terms of the inequities that exist. Stephen's going to talk about criminal justice and bringing in someone from the solicitor's office or someone from the defender's office. I think hearing it directly from folks that on the ground makes this much more real than our reports. So, Stephen.
I can't help but note that the chairman of CARTA will join us at our next meeting.
All right. There you go.
And then I can personally speak for financial services. that I'm recently retired, however, still very involved with friends. There's such a long history there, but the burning desire and it's not the inability, because it's so passionate, but the burning desire to have more diversity in financial services, because so much depends upon someone's life with their financial security. And we're desperate to have more people that look like the real world. And it's a hard thing to do. We do a lot of work with HBSUs. I would love to have a role in that. That's very important. Grab people when they're young, make them the fabric of these organizations so that it's not new and they're not outsiders. But I would love to have financial services involved, because so much with financial security and confidence, you can conquer so much more. And that's a big level of equal ground and equal footing. So I would love to see financial services involved to that degree. And so many people are so anxious to make that happen, and not always really sure how to make it happen. But the desire and the will is definitely there.
Thank you for those comments. That's an awesome way to sum tonight up. We have our next meeting scheduled for August 18th. We will work to get you those additional items you all need. Is there anything else to come before this evening's meeting? I'm hearing none. Can I get a motion to adjourn? A second? All right. Thank you all. Have a good night. Commission adjourned.